Hello, and welcome to another episode of AI in the Classroom Daily, podcast helping educators make sense of AI without the hype. I'm Dan Cogan-Drew, co-founder and chief academic officer here at Newsella, and I use AI as a thinking partner in preparing each of these episodes because I think the best way to talk honestly about AI and education is to work with it openly. So in this week's wrap-up, we're going to talk about something interesting that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. It's not a groundswell exactly, but it's becoming hard to ignore. Across the United States and internationally, school districts, states, and even entire countries are pumping the brakes on AI. They're not all doing it in the same way, and they're not all giving the same reasons, but there's a pattern. I want to take this episode to walk through 5 recent stories that capture this moment. What started as whispers about AI in schools has become something loud enough that people in charge are actually listening. So let's start with the boldest move. Norway just banned generative AI for elementary students, kids in grades 1 through 7, ages 6 to 13, not as a trial or as a pilot, a full-on ban. Students 14 to 16 can use AI, but only under teacher supervision, and teenagers 17 and up can use it on their own, but there's still clear guidance that they should do so thoughtfully. Why did Norway do this? Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store made the argument plainly. AI allows students to skip crucial steps in their learning. The country's been moving away from classroom technology for the past decade, and they've seen reading scores improve as they've done it. PISA reading scores among Norwegian 9th graders have been declining when they were using more tech. They reversed course, and now they're seeing gains. The calculation is simple in Norway's mind. Literacy and foundational skills come first. AI can wait. What strikes me about this is it's not anti-technology for its own sake. It's specifically about protecting a developmental window where kids need to build certain competencies without shortcuts. Second story, New York City. New York City promised final guidance on school AI use by June. They missed that deadline. And now the Department of Education delayed their guidance after the city received nearly 6,500 comments on their draft policy and sustained backlash from parents, educators, and city council members. Here's what tipped the scales. Over half of New York City's council members sent a letter to Mayor Mamdani and schools chancellor Kamar Samuels calling for a 2-year moratorium on AI in the nation's largest school system. Separately, a city official requested a pause on software purchases until they get the AI guidance right. The message here is clear. The public wasn't ready, and the people running the schools are hearing that message. New York City didn't say no to AI. They said not yet. But not yet became we need more time to figure this out, and that, I think, is its own kind of pause. What matters here is that a major city decided to listen before moving forward. Third story, over to Portland, Oregon. They did something similar, but with a different mechanism. Their school board voted to temporarily halt the expansion of generative AI across the district until they develop a formal oversight framework. The resolution applies to contracts they're already in and contracts they might sign in the future. So it's not just a delay, it's actually stopping new AI adoption until they can build the guardrails. What Portland decided was that they needed to think about this more carefully. They weren't rejecting AI outright, but they weren't going to keep signing agreements without a plan. They're building an oversight structure first, and I think the message here is we're not moving faster than we can govern. That's different from New York City's approach, which is more about public pressure forcing a delay. Portland's board made a proactive choice. Both end up at a pause, but through different routes. Next, over to Florida, Broward County. Broward County School Board paused the rollout of an AI platform for educators. The reason, privacy concerns, cybersecurity risks, and questions about age-appropriate content. The board agreed to revisit the decision in July after they could review a full safety report. This one's a little quieter than the others. It's not making national headlines, but I think it matters because it shows that the pause isn't just happening at the city or state level. Individual districts are hitting pause too, and they're doing it because they have specific concerns about whether the tools are actually safe. And finally, DC area parents are calling for an AI pause. This is from earlier this month in the Washington, D.C. area, where a coalition of parents, students, and educators is actively calling on school districts in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia to pause the use of student-facing AI. It's not a board decision from above, it's people from the ground pushing back. What's notable here is that the pressure isn't coming from one organized national movement. It's coming from parents who are worried about their own kids. They're looking at what's available in schools and they're saying, we don't think our children should be interacting with these tools yet. It's the voice that's been quietest in a lot of these discussions, actual families who are sending their kids to school every day. So stepping back from these 5 stories, what's actually happening? We have Norway making a policy decision based on literacy data. We have New York responding to public pressure, Portland making a governance call, Broward checking safety boxes, and parents in 3 states saying, not yet. They aren't the same story 5 times. I think there are 5 different reasons for pausing, and that's the interesting part. If you read education news, you see AI stories constantly. Most of them are about adoption, new tools, new pilots, new implementations. These 5 stories are painting a picture of the inverse. They're about deciding not to move forward, or at least not yet, and they're appearing at the same moment. What I notice here is that the pause isn't coming from one place. It's not a coordinated national policy. It's coming from multiple directions at once: governments, cities, districts, and grassroots parent groups. And when you see pressure like this from different angles, usually means something real is underlying this concern. The reasons are different. Norway cares about literacy. New York cared about whether they'd listen to the public. Portland wanted better governance structures. Broward wanted safety. Broadly, parents wanted their kids protected. Now, for a while, the conversation about AI in schools was dominated by the potential, what it could do, what it might enable. We've seen that start to change over the last year. One conversation is dominated by concern, what we're risking, what we're not sure about, what we want to protect. It's a different conversation, and it's one that probably needed to happen a bit earlier than it did. The pause isn't a no, it's more of a break. A break means we're going to slow down to figure out what we think, and that seems reasonable when you're talking about tools that can affect how kids are learning to think, as we've talked about in many different ways, many different episodes on this show. I'd also say it's worth noting who's doing the pausing: the governments, districts, and community groups. It's not the tech companies. They're still building, they're still promoting the tools, and the pressure to pause is coming from everyone except the people making the tools. There's an imbalance there, and we're going to see that put increasing pressure on school district decision makers and the communities that they serve on how to negotiate what's happening outside of school. And we've talked about where students are spending time with AI over the summer when they're not in a formal institutional learning setting. Most of the AI use that they're going to put this to is for entertainment purposes. And there's huge value to AI companies and AI tools in pushing the entertainment use case, especially when students have access to technologies outside of institutional structures over the summer. So as the companies continue to innovate and as the communities are pressing pause, students are continuing to race ahead, not just as students, but as users of these technologies whenever and wherever they're able to access them. We're going to continue to follow this story. I'm sure it's not the last that we're going to hear about this pause moment, and we'll keep you posted on our weekly Friday roundup. Thanks as always for spending a little bit of time with us, and we'll see you again on Monday.